Carsten, welcome. And floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Hope you can see me and hear myself and see the presentation. I have now the pleasure to introduce to you in this open forum quickly on some aspects that we touched upon. Building an energy community, building collective action together is of course connected to the facilitation of different stakeholders, of different perspectives that we would like to hear guide you through in a nutshell. And I do that together with also following with my colleague Julia, as well as then with Ludwig from B.A.U.M. So let's talk about some learning, engaging, and exchanging skills that are likely needed if you are entering into the world of collective action and energy communities. I would like to quickly talk about some tips and tricks on aspects of welcoming, on designing an agenda, of asking meaningful questions, on how to compose your agenda, but also with the presence of people, talking about closing an event and guiding you with some tools that are available for your use on online engagement in this current status, quite important still. So let's start with facilitating in soft skills. When you start an agenda, it's very useful if you know beforehand who are you talking to, what is the context, what are the audience, where do the participants come from. That is quite important and a recommendation here in line with the GDPR regulation, of course, but look at the participant list, who has registered, for whom are you sending these messages to that you are gathering and you are formulating. Prepare the agenda in advance, share them with your participants so that they can actually prepare themselves and their train of thought. Interact with participants via surveys, short exercises in the warm-up phase, very much recommended, especially if you are planning to have an interactive session. Then that also enables the facilitator, for instance, to get an impression of the group and can maybe steer the facilitation also accordingly. Ask the question, what do you expect from this training? And then you know much better, and maybe place some deliberate messages throughout and at the end. Work with visuals, also in the warm-up phase, to break the ice, source them as well, and not to run into troubles here. When you prepare an agenda, you, as I said, should define the meeting goals, the session goals, prepare the timing, so the structure, evaluate how much can you spend on certain point, include the questions and answer time properly, and then potentially even rehearse some sessions, also the online sessions, if you want to make sure that they are running smoothly within the given time. And when you prepare an agenda and your script, you may plan in different phases. You certainly have an opener, an eye opener sometimes, a warm up. And then if it's a workshop, for instance, then you likely have a collecting or exploring phase together with the audience, and where you collect the different points of discussion, for instance. However, often due to time constraints, you are not able to go into depth into all of these collected points. So you should structure them, prioritize them with the audience potentially, and then to deepen some discussion points in order to have a meaningful discussion, in order for everyone to feel, okay, we are going into a direction which is new, which is engaging, which is motivating. You can in another phase also harvest the collective brain, so to say, the ideas and thoughts, and then stop with a closing. When you ask meaningful questions, they can, of course, be in different modes, and it's important that you understand or plan what do I want to achieve with this very session. Is it a gathering of information? Is it a spreading of information? Would you like to receive the information from the participants? That's rather a one-way communication. If you would like to have a different mode, then maybe the exchange is the one you are planning for. So a facilitated discussion, a change of perspectives, of networking session potentially, or a connecting session. You may also have a session which you organize in order to create ideas, create a vision, or develop a solution. Then it's yet another different outlook and planning of the agenda. If you plan question, you can also plan them differently. For instance, asking closed questions. Shall this wind turbine be installed in this very area, for instance? Or you have open questions. How much change are you willing to accept? And then you collect and then maybe structure the answers. Or you want to have circular systemic questions. And here maybe sometimes the change of perspective is quite enlightening. Here using, for instance, what would the Black Forest recommend to do? Where would it install the wind turbine, for instance? Things like that can enable the discussion, facilitate the discussion. When you don't have so much time, but in any case, it's very much recommended that you structure your charts where you're collecting information, pre-structure them, even sometimes pre-preparing them with half sentence already being prepared, and people just answer them. That will guide the discussion and maybe leads to a collective and quicker output in a certain time frame. Body language is important, so make sure if you have online events that the light is okay, that the camera you're looking at, and by that it's also quite important to have an interactive discussion. For all these different phases, there are many tools available, and I just very quickly will outline those and for you to follow them in more detail. So there are things like Slido, so question and answer and polling, Mentimeter of similar nature, Kahoot, which is a quiz tool, and Mural which allows visual collaboration. Very quickly, Slido, you likely know. You put in a number, and then you are able to participate in a polling, and are able to answer some questions. Also word clouds you are able to create, which could be commented by the facilitator, and by that either breaking the ice or facilitating a discussion and getting a picture. With Kahoot, for instance, you have the possibility to have a kind of questionnaire with a certain set of participants. The quicker you answer, and of course, the more you ascertain, the racing becomes then always visible who's in front. It's quite fun also for building a group which you don't know. And last but not least, here also collecting the ideas in a virtual through a virtual tool, through Post-its. We will hear shortly more about it. There are several tools available to do online trainings, to facilitate online sessions for your collective actions. These are the outline which we will share for you to take a look afterwards. They're all linked, so you can have further look into them. Last but not least, the closing is also very important. Also design your questions at the end to explore with the group. If it's a longer journey, a longer process, explain the next steps that are going to come. And by that, maybe asking a question, which part of the training you enjoyed the most? And by that, I thank you very much and hand over to my colleague, Julia. Julia?
I see Julia is here, but
Maybe the handover was too sudden, too quick.
Sorry.
I am very sorry. I seem to have been kicked out and I cannot see Zoom anymore. My screen is entirely black.
But we hear you. That's already
so maybe we
progress.
switch it around. I tried to solve my issue, and Fanny, maybe you can take the first instance and then I follow after you, if that's all right.
Certainly. Over to you, Fanny or Ludwig.
Would be Ludwig.
No, that is sudden. We have to decide. And anyway, we said we make it in a row, and for gender balancing reasons or for age reasons, I should speak. Fanny could as well, but I take the step, if you don't mind, and say what we jointly have created. I think the truth why at the end the group said that Ludwig should present it was that I have driven people mad with my stories about the coffee shops in the Silicon Valley. In one of my former lives, I was on duty in an American company, and we spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, and you know or you don't know that the Larry Pages and the Elon Musks and the Bill Gates people in the 80s of the last century, they frequently met in coffee shops. They were alongside a road, and when you had an idea, you always went to one of these coffee shops. You always met people that had also weird ideas, and you managed to get along and create companies like Microsoft or Facebooks or so. And what is still there is when you have an idea and you go for investors, you go to the coffee places. Today, I think my understanding is not so much exchanging ideas anymore, but getting the money. But still in the 80s, it was where you met the people with the weird ideas and you joined forces and you started new businesses. And I said, okay, why don't we build something like that? A virtual place where people that are after whatever type of collective actions or energy communities, they can meet, negotiate the meeting, or just go there and meet someone. It's sort of informal. They exchange knowledge, and they, in a sense, they also shape the entire movement. Because, I mean, when I tell the story from the Silicon Valley, at the end of the day, the people that joined alongside this road in all these dozens of coffee places, and they shaped this valley and the movement of the ICT in the 80s and the 90s. So it's not only that you meet people one by one, twinning situations, but all together you may have a say in changing the world. So this is the idea behind. This is a big picture. It shows these circles. Every circle is, say, a person or an institution, and they either meet in these boxes that Carsten and his people wanted to explain. They go to conferences, to web meetings, to webinars, to trainings, and so on and so on. They decide coffee shop. We said, this is a very special one. The specialty is there that you typically, when you establish a community, you start with a weird idea and you end up hopefully with a stable community if you follow all the rules that Florian has explained and you have explained. But you run through something like you understand the framework, the partners, then you develop an offer and a work structure, and you probably test something and you realize it doesn't work. So you step back, you try to better understand people. And at some point you need to assess, and you need maybe some experience, or at least someone to talk to. And then you broaden, if you are successful finally with your tests and prototypes, you broaden your approach, and you hopefully end up with a stable community. You could do that alone, or you could do it with others. Here we try to depict that in a very early stage, you probably go to this knowledge hub that you will have opportunity to understand in a minute. But from then on, you get a hand. And the idea is that you get a hand from one of our pilots. So there is a sort of twinning. Maybe it's two pilots with one replicant or two replicants with one pilot, but it's not many. It's not many. And you get a hand, and they go with you alongside the walk through all these steps. The ones that are a bit more experienced, and we claim that the pilots are a bit more experienced than the replicants. They help you starting, but from some point on, it's bilateral learning. So one learns from the other, and our pilots are not perfect as well. I mean, maybe they can learn from the replicants as well. So that's the idea. The way we want to and we will implement is sort of 6 cases or classes. One is you just informally meet. You organize chat rooms, Zooms, person meetings. We hope that there will be in-person meetings at some point of time with your patrons or partners. Then you could set up special capacity buildings very targeted to the very need of the replicant. Of course, the pilots or the experts, you can also liaise with other experts in the DECIDE consortium. They can use examples that they know or have seen, and also the workshop material that Carsten has been showing before. So you can get pieces of such trainings. Of course, you could sit together one by one at the table in the coffee shop and co-create some solutions, deploy them in the replicant case, or maybe even in the patron case. And you can jointly assess the results. So we will implement means so you can pitch to each other, you can organize feedback sessions. It's easy to do. Don't care about the frameworks, don't care about the technologies that is being set up in the coffee shop. You may get also more input from a bigger peer group. Imagine you have a club of whatever, and you have your annual meeting. You say, okay, our annual meeting is in this coffee shop. So there are 10 tables with 3 people each. This is not forbidden, of course, to organize such peer-to-peer bigger sessions. And you may convene and decide how you approach legislation, regulation, or decision makers, so to lobby a bit for your ideas jointly. So the coffee shop club jointly has a say. So these are the ideas. If you have in mind what a coffee shop can be and would do, you're on the right track. We will provide such locations, virtual locations and tools so you can meet and exchange and learn from each other and become stable communities, as many as possible. Thank you. There's some time left. Do we have a speaker?
Thank you, Ludwig.
Yes, that would be me.
Yes.
Sorry, Ludwig.
Julia, go ahead.
Julia.
Yeah, give me a moment to share my screen.
Thank you, Ludwig, for this really interesting and imaginative explanation of the coffee shop. I think we're all now there in the Silicon Valley forming our energy communities.
Only the coffee is missing, right?
Yeah.
We can provide everything, not as at this point of time, not the coffee, but that will change.
All right, I hope, thank you so much, Ludwig, for jumping in. And I hope it's all right that I leave my camera off because I think I had a bit of a connection problem for a moment. All right, can you hear me properly?
Fine.
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Carsten introduced, I wanted to tie a bit together all the opportunities for engagement that you actually have within the DECIDE project, even if you're not a partner in the project. So it has been mentioned many times, we are setting up something called the DECIDE Knowledge Hub. The basis for this is a challenge we realized at the onset of this project, that a lot of information on energy communities, on energy collective actions is already out there, but we have to make it somehow easier to access and to filter. So this was the base idea for this Knowledge Hub. So what we're developing currently is a database of information sources. So if you want to, something like a meta database that also includes a repository of all the capacity building materials we are developing under DECIDE, but also capacity building materials that are already out there. It's to be launched, so it's almost done, and you're going to be able to find it under knowledgeforenergy.eu. I can give you a first impression. It's going to have several parts, but the database itself will look a bit like this. So we will present different initiatives For example, here Rolex, which is a H2020 project, or the EU Covenant of Mayors and Climate, Mayors for Climate and Energy. We will introduce a bit what they're doing and especially how they are connected to energy communities. So what is the link? Because sometimes, such as the Covenant of Mayors, these initiatives are very huge and it might not be apparent what is their work on energy communities. How can you benefit from their knowledge, experience, materials that are more catered to your needs? So this will be the database we're developing, and it will be more a database of links. There's also a part where we will directly upload resources, recordings of webinars, etc. So where you have more a real repository of materials. The second thing was mentioned several times. We're doing a row of capacity building workshops, and they're really focused on active knowledge exchange. So the idea would be not only for us to say, we have done this in the site, we have done this in the site, but we want to tie it together with other initiatives, with information that's already out there, and of course also get input from other people in the field, just as Job did at the start of this meeting today. The next one is in the frame of Green Week on the 10th of June, and it's under the title Acting Together, Enhanced Participation in Community Energy Initiatives. So you're very welcome to sign up for this one. I wanted to really quickly summarize the engagement opportunities. Of course, we would like you to share your knowledge and information. So you can add your information to the online hub. There will be a form where you can simply add in fields, basically, all the information we would need from your side. And then also you can provide us with your capacity building materials, and we can, if they're fitting, we can upload them to our online knowledge hub. And of course, we would also invite you to share your knowledge, experiences in our capacity building workshops and be active participants there. Then of course, you can build your capacity via these workshops and online, and use the training materials. And also we would be happy for you to share anything, of course, the site produces with your networks and increase the capacity building overall. And lastly, you can profit from becoming a replicator. I have now said, I think, capacity building about 15 times. And we are currently still developing a lot of these workshops and webinars. This is not a finalized program yet. We have started, of course, also building our first materials. But as Franziska said earlier, this is going to continue for a while, the site. So it's not set in stone how our materials will look at the end. So we would be very interested also to really cater this to existing needs and information gaps. And for this, we have a short mural exercise. Carsten mentioned mural before and showed a screenshot. Valeria, if you could quickly copy into the chat the link to the mural. If you go onto that link, I think it should be made available to you in a second. You can just click enter as a visitor. There's no need for registration. So I just wanted to make this point clear. You're going to see something like this, but you can just visit as any animal, and you will see something like this screen. And there are 4 questions we are interested in. A, what are the aspects you think are most difficult to find information about? B, what do you consider the biggest barrier when setting up energy communities? I think Job already hinted at his experiences earlier with regulation, but maybe there are other things like organizational, financial, dealing with local stakeholders or local specificities. And then we are interested in the biggest challenge when engaging people. So what, also linking to what Florian has introduced earlier, so how can we engage people in our community, maybe also thinking about a longer term perspective. And lastly, I would be very interested to hear what would motivate you personally to join an energy community or collective action as and participate there, or if you already are a participant, what has motivated you to join? So which were the main driving forces? And editing this is very easy. You just click on one of these post-its, or you just add a new one from the side, and you can just fill in your experiences. This is going to remain open for a few days. So if you think tomorrow or later today, I still have a few ideas, and please feel free to add over the next few days. Yeah, and that's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yulia. I really hope that everybody will take a few seconds or a minute to participate in the mural. We would really like to hear your opinion. I want to thank you very much for today, for being here, for joining us, and all the partners, and also Job for joining us and presenting an example from Netherlands, which was not necessarily mentioned yesterday at the beginning, but Decide and Commit, we call it like this because we are really focusing on how to start an energy community, how to motivate people to join an energy community. And this is something that we'll continue this discussion tomorrow. We hope you join us. We start from 9 until noon tomorrow, and we'll be discussing regulatory and also social aspects with the partners from our project, with the pilots, but also with the partners from other Horizon 2020 projects that are dealing with the same questions, but maybe different parts of Europe. And then we'll be finishing with some, let's say, solutions or how to overcome some of the barriers that have been discussed. Again, thank you very much for your time today. This is where we close this part of Decide and Commit today. Thanks, everybody. And for the project partners, we have another link to join in for the project meeting. And I'll see you in a minute.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.